Hi, everybody. We are here today with Hector DelCastillo to talk about the future of technology. Hello, everybody. Hector DelCastillo is the founder and CEO of Bold PM, where he inspires the next generation of product managers to build high-performance teams that turn ideas into valuable products faster. If you want to know more about his company, Bold PM, you can find out more about it at boldpm.co. Hector, we're happy to have you here today. Thank you so much for making yourself available and for being here to answer questions for our audience.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mike.
Thanks so much. We're going to get right into this, Hector. I've got a lot of questions. Now, I know you do a lot of talking, you do a lot of consulting about the future of technology. I've looked at some of your material. It provoked me with lots of questions. But for starters, let's just high level. How do you see the future of technology? What do you see it looking like over the next 8 years throughout the 2020s? What are the big areas of disruption, and what is it that our audience needs to know about?
Well, it's actually a very exciting time to be if you're actually into technology, which I was born and raised as an engineer and worked in technology for decades now. And it's an interesting time because you find yourself, okay, why is technological change more important, and why is its emphasis now more important than ever before? And it's important to understand that many experts and analysts who have been kind of tracking the trends are saying that we are in the middle of a new industrial era. And if you remember, the original industrial era was back almost a century, more than a century ago, that kind of drove a lot of innovations that we've seen in the last century. Things like the telegram, the telephone, the railroad, transportation systems and infrastructure being created around the world. That was all driven and enabled by the Industrial Revolution of the 20th century. And it was in the 1920s when it started and it kind of launched globally. What most analysts are saying is that we're in the middle of a new industrial revolution, and you can call this Industry 4.0. You can call it Internet of Things, the next generation of Internet of Things, but it's in fact the invention and reinvention of new things. And most analysts are saying that in the next 10 years, between now and 2030, we're going to see a lot more innovations than in the previous 100 years. And what it means is that technological change is not only accelerating, it will continue to accelerate through the end of this decade, through 2030 at the very least, and everybody will start figuring out, why do I need to be an early adopter even if I'm in a laggard type of organization? Because most analysts are saying if you don't adopt to the new technologies, you're going to be left behind, and more nimble, smaller companies are going to disrupt the market and disrupt incumbents.
Hector, as you know from our podcast, TrueTech Insight, we've interviewed a lot of people like yourself about subjects like automation, computing power, AI, cloud, 5G. But looking at some of your material, I see a lot of things that aren't on my list and haven't been covered by any of our speakers. I see things like the future of programming, software 2.0, next generation materials, the bio revolution, hyperautomation, data fabric, cybersecurity mesh. There's a lot here. So, we're going to throw this into our bucket, going forward, and we're going to try to cover as much of this as we can for our audience. But could you tell us, what do you, out of all of this, including the stuff that we cover on a regular basis and the material that you've covered, where do you see technology getting the most traction in the short term? There's a lot to sort through here. What's going to get traction in the next 2 years as opposed to the next 8 years?
Sure. So I'm going to mention at least some of the top 10, what I would call top 10 technologies that are right now emerging and will be accelerating in the next few years, trying to get to a product to market fit across industries, because these technologies are not just for one industry. They actually will benefit many different industries. And these are some of the things that organizations like McKinsey and Gartner have discussed, and independent, they have published this information. And I'm just going to give you a synopsis of some of these technologies, but things like what's going to enable the metaverse, for example. If you look at what is the metaverse, right? Metaverse is actually the convergence of augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, among other technologies that we've been hearing about for the last 5 years. And it's actually the next trend in the IoT, the Internet of Things, is to create this virtual world that is immersive. And immersive can be to create a more immersive experience for an organization's customers or users, or it could be about how you work with teams that are not necessarily next to each other, but they're going to be working together in this immersive environment. And that's the future of work. So many of these technologies, it's a convergence of these technologies that can create solutions for different applications. And everybody right now is fast and furious trying to figure out what is the right infrastructure that we need to have in place in order to enable future platforms and then applications that will allow different industries and different types of users to use to create solutions that they need to drive some of the top things that are top of mind for most CEOs. And there are three things and three reasons why most CEOs are thinking about how to actually pick the right technologies to integrate into their operations as soon as possible. Number one is how to drive greater growth post-COVID-19 economy. How to actually be able to accelerate digital transformation across not just one aspect of their business, but throughout the entire business. And how to do this in a way to increase the efficiency of their operations, which most part means automate the processes that don't necessarily add a lot of value either to the business or their customers and users, and be able to focus on using the people to do the things where you need to, that you cannot easily automate, and just create collaborative processes that are either driven by AI or robots working alongside humans. And those humans may not necessarily be next to each other. Now they're going to be able to work from wherever you're at, and as if you are next to your peers and colleagues as you're doing work. So to imagine that, it's going to be something that creates an immersive experience, and it depends on whether it's your internal work environment that is not even seen by your customers and users, but it's how you operate and how you add value, different than your competition. It's about how you market and sell products and services to your customers and users, and how you actually make it easy for them to, very intuitive, very simple for them to use without needing a lot of training or a lot of coaching, or in the way you can operate and quickly set up and manage those solutions so that they can continue to do whatever they're doing. And all of these things will require lots of different people working together to figure out how to actually create this, evolve these technologies to create a whole solution, which is what they need right now to satisfy these three things: greater growth, greater efficiency through automation, and accelerate the adoption of digital technologies into your operations across everything that you do.
So can you help me understand some of these specific technologies and why they're important and what role that they're going to play in this vision that you just outlined? For instance, what exactly do you mean by software 2.0 and the future of programming?
Sure. So software 2.0, it's all about figuring out how to actually start creating algorithms without having to code. So it's actually using like natural language programming and even newer languages that don't require, what typical coders do today, which is grab code, put it together, and then test it out and make sure that it works according to what they're looking for them to do. Now it's about speaking to computers, and the computers will automatically generate the logic and the workflows either visually or by engaging as if I'm talking to a person and I'm telling it, I need a routine that does this, this, and this, and I want it to be done with this speed. And I may need you to actually create multiple ways of doing it and test it out to see which one actually is best. So it's actually creating the workflow and then the logic as if you're talking to someone and not having to code yourself. And
how I'm sorry to interrupt, but how mature is this? Would you say this technology is? Is this something that is a early stage, or is it mature and out there and in use?
so it's already being used right now as far as what I would call building blocks. So if you've seen the emergence of chatbots, right? And chatbots will be either the ones that whenever you see chat now capability on somebody's website, you're not necessarily going to be getting responses from a live person. It's actually a chat bot. But the chat bot is not just for chats, online chats. It can be a response to texts. So you're texting back and you're interacting. It's a algorithm where there's some AI, artificial intelligence behind it, and their responses, they learn. So it requires a human being to actually train those learning algorithms to actually what is the best response based on the type of question and what the users are typing based on who they are. There's a lot of personalization involved and a lot of training involved that you don't see. You think about, the behavior of the robots that you see from Boston Dynamics, for example, and you think, oh yeah, once you see this video and they're dancing, it looks hilarious. It went viral for some reason, but there's a lot of failure and failed experiments because these robots are learning. No one is coding. They are learning, and it requires a coach, a human coach and trainer to think of different scenarios so that to enable these robots to learn how to do things right. And there's 1,001 ways of failing, doing it the wrong way. Coming up with what you see on a short video takes thousands of hours and thousands of people training those robots. And that's what the future of programming is. You need trainers and coaches interacting with algorithms and or robots that are learning robots.
So basically, Software 2.0 is an application of automation, of deep learning, of natural language process, of NLP. It's a fusion of all these things, which are new technologies in their own right. Okay,
yes.
Coming together and then breeding to create this new technology, which is Software 2.0. And I'm presumably that's solving two problems, but it's hitting the efficiency problem that you spoke about, and it's also facilitating digital transformation. Doesn't seem like it's very good news for software programmers, or maybe it is. Maybe the software programmers, I'm assuming, we're going to move up the value adds chain.
Definitely so, because now we're talking about there's also the next generation of processors to enable this. It's going to require the next generation, not the current microprocessors that are being used in our mobile devices today. And companies like Intel and others have already launched new processors specifically for this type of neural language programming and to enable Software 2.0. So
are you saying though that the current computing power, that the current processors are not powerful enough to facilitate Software 2.0, that we need a new generation of more powerful processors in order to make this a broadly accepted reality?
So it's safe to say that the microchips or processors are part of an infrastructure, and the infrastructure needs to be put together, and it's right now being built. Now you're trying to basically figure out exactly what are the features and functionality that must be part of this infrastructure that needs to be built for the future, and it will need, this future of programming will need completely different processors than the ones that are currently being used for whatever we have on our hand, whatever device we have on our hands today. And so the next generation of computing is in support of future of programming, and they both together are going to enable the future of new things, like creating more immersive, realistic environment for like the metaverse, for example. Because before you can deliver the right infrastructure for metaverse, you will need both the right hardware and the right software. And we're talking, these are new things, not the current technologies that create this current infrastructure to enable the next generation of the metaverse, as an example.
Well, I mean, you bring that up, the metaverse. By the way, your list that you've given me is such an abundance of riches. We could spend an entire hour and a half just on Software 2.0. I'm already hooked, but you mentioned the metaverse. And so I have to sort of wonder, is 5G sufficient in itself to facilitate the widespread adoption of the metaverse, or are we going to need 6G? And if the answer is yes, one of the problems with that is I don't think we're going to hit a 6G world until 2030. So that kind of would take this from one of the short-term trends to one of the midterm trends. But what are your thoughts on that, on 5G versus 6G relative to the metaverse?
So 5G, I think, is good enough to actually launch the infrastructure. But as the infrastructure gets more adoption at the global level, we will need to have higher speeds for connectivity alone. What this immersive environment, to create this immersive experience that you want to deliver to something like the metaverse. In the metaverse, you have to have the right infrastructure, and the infrastructure will require new hardware, so processors and memory, all those things, in addition to a new way of actually doing the programming itself that is not just coding by humans, because you want to eliminate as much of the human error possible in both to be able to have a stable infrastructure on which you can build platforms and then applications. And those applications will have to be built for industry by industry, for the type of users that are going to be consuming based on the use cases. And in order to have a whole product, this metaverse infrastructure will have to be done in phases, just like the internet started in the early days of the internet back in the 1990s. In the end of the 20th century, you now have seen 3 or 4 iterations of web and internet. And every time that we go to a higher level, it means higher speeds of connectivity and ease of connectivity across environments, across vendors, and managing just the connectivity across environments is part of the needed infrastructure to ensure that there's seamless connectivity no matter what carrier or what vendor you choose to run your network in. And networks are part of infrastructure. So 5G is the beginning of this infrastructure for the metaverse. I would expect that at some point, we're going to very quickly get to the limits of what currently 5G is slated to do in the next 10 years. And yes, there will be a need for a 6G. And there's already talks, by the way, of a 6G working group, even as 5G is being launched specifically for the reasons that they're already bumping into challenges that they're expect to be reaching in the next 3 to 5 years, not 10 years. So the only thing that's going to driving this, how quickly you deploy, is the economies of scale, right? The cost of deploying these networks, and how do you make it easier to deploy a new network by overlaying a different network and still interoperate, so you can go back and forth between the current speed networks for some things, but go to higher speeds when you need to, and make it more of a flexible, where perhaps you can actually start allocating bandwidth over the air based on the generation without having to switch the actual equipment. These are the kinds of things that are now being talked, is how to actually reuse a lot of the things that are part of infrastructure that are really expensive to replace when you need to move into a different evolution. I think 5G have some of the elements that can easily say, through purely software, meaning firmware and software upgrade, you can support higher speeds as long as you have the rights to broadcast over the air.
And just let me take a step back, because I lost something I lost a thread in all of this, which is that when we're talking about the metaverse as being a kind of an application that is relying on 5G, Internet of Things, various pieces of hardware, you're also saying that software 2.0 is a critical success factor for the metaverse, okay, in terms of the software component. And why is that? Why does it have to be? I mean, we've done okay so far with people coding software manually. Why is, again, software 2.0 sort of critical for the metaverse to be kind of mature and make it to the next level?
So the simple answer is that to enable hyper automation, which means, industrial automation, to actually reinvent the way we make things that we're actually buying right now. So electric vehicles, as an example, okay? Tesla went to market a few years ago and was very successful with their original model, but it was very expensive, not for the mainstream market, right? What Tesla has done with their current model that is in market right now to bring down the expense, they had to reinvent the way they assemble these Tesla vehicles that are being sold today. And they actually had to do a lot of work to automate the entire assembly line. It was a completely new assembly line because the Teslas of today are made like no other fossil fuel based vehicle is being built today. And there are examples of other companies that are going to have to do the same in order to be able to reach those economies of scale, meaning higher automation reduces your cost structure because it requires less manual labor being done. And therefore, you're only allocating people to do the things that cannot be easily automated, but you focus on at least making something differently to lower the cost of production. And in anything in transportation, any kind of vehicle, whether it's an autonomous vehicle or a vehicle that we just want that requires someone to drive, where it's a pilot or a driver, and trying to reduce the cost requires automation in the way you make them. So Tesla started solving that problem. Rivian, for example, another example, if you're familiar with Rivian, they're right now already have electric trucks. So think about the equivalent of a Ford F-150 truck. That's what Rivian is making. And right now they're very expensive because they're doing the same thing as Tesla. Current things that they started, yes, they can actually put it together. Their cost started at $80,000 for the first adopters. Now they went up, not down, because they haven't yet reinvented their manufacturing processes. So if you want a Rivian truck, yes, you can get it if you can afford $100,000 or more to order your Rivian truck. And they're being delivered today, but trying to scale that for the mainstream market, Rivian will have to do exactly the same thing that Tesla did to sell their Model 3s, to bring down the unit price. They will have to reinvent the way they're making those trucks today. So the product doesn't change. It's how you assemble it and how you implement automation that does not exist today. And there's a lot of invention that you and I don't see because we're not the producers, right? We want to drive the next electric truck, and we just want to make sure that it's priced right. Well, pricing it right and achieving the economies of scale means reinventing something that we don't see as when we're the vendor or producers. And that means reinvention in industrial automation first. And then that drives the production and being able to produce them faster and cheaper because of automation, that now you have new assembly lines that can create new things that we haven't been able to do before. And that will drive the introduction and also the lowering of cost over time to introduce across markets.
So what in your opinion then are the sectors in the economy or the specific verticals that are going to be the most impacted by hyperautomation, or that are going to feel more of a mandate that they must move in this direction? Who's on the front line? What verticals or sectors are on the front line? I know you mentioned the automobile industry. What else can you?
So, did you know that the biggest investor in Rivian, which is already a public company, is Amazon.com? And I'll tell you why. Amazon.com is the biggest enterprise customer for Rivian because they have a contract for Rivian to deliver 100,000 electric delivery trucks to Amazon, because the next generation of trucks that you're going to see from Amazon are going to be electric vehicles. And yes, they will be requiring a pilot, but many of them will actually have driver-assisted programs to prevent accidents for anyone delivering using an electric vehicle on Amazon.com. Why is that? Number one, Amazon is investing because this is part of their reason why they want to reduce greenhouse emissions in anything they do, including the delivery of products. And all they do is they're an online reseller of somebody else's products. So they want to focus on the delivery part, the last mile, which is not going to be very possible to do by autonomous vehicles all the time. they're actually figuring out how to reduce the carbon footprint of delivering faster in the future at the same time that they're reducing their net zero gas emissions in their operations. And so you start seeing companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, IBM, all the top technology companies, they're actually starting to invest in these, what we call, to you and I, these are Horizon 3 industries, because they're more than 3 years from now before you actually have viable solutions. But it could accelerate, because by accelerating those horizons, you can actually, once you get it right, you can accelerate them put them into Horizon 2 and then 1. And Horizon 1 is what's available today for you and I to consume and buy either online or at a retail location. And that's what's happening right now. So all these top technology companies that are the top 5, the top 10 around the world, because this is not just necessarily just US-based organizations, they're actually driving these Horizon 3 technologies to gain adoption, create whole solutions, and accelerate introduction into market in a way that has a high product to market fit, but also has the economies of scale, because they're already scalable solutions, so that if they get demand, they can very quickly up the actual production with very little additional investment needed in getting it done. Main thing would be to just source the raw materials and the components, and make sure that they can achieve, bring along their suppliers to ensure that there are no supply chain disruptions trying to gain that production. And that's, typically what's happening right now. And this is the reason why it's enabling, electric vehicles are enabling the next generation of transportation and logistics to reduce the price and the speed as to which we're going to be, ordering online and getting delivered to wherever we want those things to be delivered faster, and also be able to reduce the carbon footprint at the same time. And it's all being done because they're thinking of different ways of lateral thinking, how to consume these technologies that are right now still, yes, there's a lot of things we don't know, but this is the exciting thing. It's that innovation and creativity and the ability to figure out, okay, we have problems, we have new problems, we have new ways of delivering solutions. Let's use those as quickly as possible to ensure that we are actually solving the right problems with the right implementation of a solution that fits the market, and bring them to market as quickly as possible, create revenue, and then continue to just make sure that they're scalable from the very beginning. So the way we architect and the way we design is changing, and it's going to continue consuming from these new technologies much faster. That's what Agile has done for us, right? The implementation of Agile methodologies allows us to very quickly define what a sprint interval is, assign the right team members with the right skill sets to figure out what is the way that you're going to be producing whatever it is that you're going to be delivering. And then through incremental and iterative development, you're delivering things incrementally and trying to figure out how to monetize on those things at the same time and deliver the right value to the right customers immediately.
Hector, I want to, before I ask for some of your prognostications about the distant future, I want to have you define a few more of these concepts for our audience, because I did come across some things in our email exchanges that I had never heard of. And if they're important enough for you to put in your presentations, then I need to know what they're about. So one of these concepts is the concept of data fabric and cybersecurity mesh. So can you help us understand what that is, why it's important for this what we're talking about today?
So cybersecurity mesh is the implementation of cybersecurity much faster in a linear way, given the new networks that are out there, which are much faster. And, by the way, if they enable the right things and the right actors to do things faster, they will also enable, unfortunately, the bad actors with a little bit of knowledge so they can tap in and start attacking your private networks even faster. And, the deployment of the rise of these ransomware attacks across markets and across the different types of businesses it's actually driving the emergence of different security that you can turn on much quicker, much less expensive, and has a lot broader scope, and is more flexible in the way that you need to now immediately have answers to 0-day defects that are out there found, and then be able to react to them fast enough before you get hacked. Mm-hmm. Because it's not a matter of if you're going to get hacked, it's a matter of when. And it's a moving target. You want to make it a moving target. A cyber mesh allows, through software upgrades, be able to start being more flexible and introduce fixes to actual vulnerabilities that are found much quicker, and be deployed and delivered to networks that you want to protect as quickly as you can, to avoid to actually eliminate the risk of a ransomware attack.
And what about this concept of data fabric? Is that similar?
So the data fabric will be an enabler, because data could be anything, right? Just like data can be about analytics, about what you do or how to make better decisions about your business and how you operate your business, and all those things that are business related. The data mesh is actually what you need to actually transfer information. So if you need faster and bigger upgrades to be done across networks, you've got to deliver them somehow. And just like there is a over-the-air infrastructure, there's also wired infrastructure, which in this case, wire means fiber optical networks for metro stops, delivering all these upgrades much quicker, much faster, no matter how big they are and how many servers and endpoints need to be upgraded almost immediately. So the data mesh is actually part of the infrastructure of a cybersecurity mesh, because not only do you have to protect your data, you also have to be able to, through your control plane, which usually are separate but running on different networks, you have to protect all of those, what you send out as upgrades and who controls that, and then make sure it's the right actor and not a bad actor trying to use, take over the network and control of the network, and then be able to exfiltrate your data. So all of this means that your data fabric has to enable much faster data of all sorts, actual information, but also control information, which includes updates to your endpoints. And those have to be done much quicker in a more agile way. I would foresee that in the future, whenever there's a vulnerability found, within days, not weeks, within days, there'll be a fix, and then the fix will be deployed across networks. And it's going to be enabled by the data mesh and the cybersecurity mesh that need to be overlaid on top of each other. One is protecting both the data that needs to be guarded from your competition and other people who are following what you're doing, because it's about your business. But other will be about your operations and making sure that you are preventing bad actors from impacting something that disrupts your business, like a ransomware attack.
Hector, again, we could spend we could have 5 different discussions about each of these topics, because I have so many questions, but I have to move on. You have listed next generation materials as being a big disruptor, and you've sent me a chart which shows that it's going to have an impact on pharma, automotive, advanced industries, the world of chemical engineering, electronics, information technology, and telecommunications. So that's pretty broad-based in terms of disruptive influence. And when you specifically are talking about next generation materials, I see reference here to nanomaterials, graphene, 2D materials, molybdenum, and disulfide nanoparticles. So that's a mouthful. Could you try to give us the executive summary of these next generation materials, what they are, and why they are going to transform the world that we live in?
Sure. So one thing would be delivery of, let's say, even medicine, right? Whether it's supplements or whether it's a vaccine. It's not there in the future. You no longer will need injections. You can just breathe, just like you do an inhalator when you have asthma, for example, right? So the administration in pharmaceutical, the administration of those things will be by breathing in, not through injection. And there are many are saying that this will actually start allowing people who are against an injection for a vaccine or for even as a cure being administered that way. Now you're just going to walk into a booth and then just breathe in the air. And now you either are going to be vaccinated that way, or you're going to get cured because you're inhaling whatever it is that you need based on your condition. That's in pharmaceutical and biomedicine. That's nanomaterials, things that you can inhale rather than liquids that you need to inject or administer some other way.
Mhm.
Now, in the semiconductor industry, for example, a lot of these newer next generation computing will need the enablement of thin films to do more things like that. One example is, thin films. Thin films have been used to create solar panels.
I'm sorry. Could you say that again? 10 what? 10? What's the what 10? What's the word you used?
Oh, this is for solar panels and in the industry of solar panels.
Okay.
Thin films. So thin films is what you spray on to create the solar panels that you see today that are being used by anyone who is using solar panels to produce energy they consume right from the sun.
Okay.
Solar powered solutions. In the future, and actually there's already a company that has come up with a transparent film that they apply to windows. And now they're creating entire buildings that just by using what appears to be normal windows, they actually have solar absorption. They absorb the infrared and the UV rays of the sunlight to create solar power for the entire building. It's right now an emerging company. It's a brand new company that's still in startup mode. But guess what? In less than 2 years, they're already funded to become global. And it's actually something that you're seeing. It's innovation of materials to create thin films that are seamless to you and I. But now you're creating structures that have multiple purposes, because now a window can also serve as a solar panel for a larger building. And now the thing is, how can I order these things, right? If you are a building operator and you know that you don't have the space, the real estate to power up your entire building, you can create new structures using this different building block that just by the power of this nanomaterial that you're applying as a thin film to existing structures, you're now creating multiple functionality out of the same structure. This is the way that this is going to revolutionize everything from the way that buildings are made to the way they're powered at the same time. And it's also going to drive these buildings to become net zero producers, because operating them will be less expensive now. They won't require fossil-based fuels to power the people inside these buildings. And I think a lot of these materials, there's going to be a lot of different things that are going to be invented if you can think about, how do I make something different? And actually, how do I can I create put this same film on a screen that I can it's still a touch screen on my device, but I can now power it through the sun, because I can put that film on the back side and on the front side. And either way, if I am using my device in the sun, maybe I don't have to power it anymore. Maybe I don't have to charge it anymore, because it's going to be solar powered now. And this doesn't change the functionality of my device. It's just the different materials that now I am putting in there that are seamless and unobtrusive to the users, that I can consider doing it to actually add a new functionality that hasn't been thought of before. You can do this for car windows, for example. Same thing. Use it on car windows. Anything that has a glass surface, you can reinvent and figure out how to make it a self-powered kind of thing, if you have enough sun energy, or even if you have enough lights to create energy from the infrared and the ultraviolet rays that are normally invisible to the human eye.
Hector, this is a lot of material for us to get our heads around. But the bottom line is that a lot of our audience members are people like myself. They're kind of the rank and file, IT professionals that are out there in the field. They're managing projects, they're product managers, they're project managers, program managers, or they're software programmers of some kind. What sort of advice, the final kind of question to kind of wrap up this discussion, what sort of advice do you have for just us, the workers, of the world? I mean, you seem to have a very optimistic outlook. I know there's a lot of people out there, obviously, who aren't so optimistic about AI and automation and some of these trends. They see it creating a lot of unemployment. But you seem to be very optimistic. There seems to be a lot of opportunity for us to kind of move up the value chain. What sort of advice would you have for us so that we can continue to stay relevant and have the right skill sets for the next 10 years?
Sure. So this is something that I talk to both project managers, business analysts, product analysts, and product managers, right? Because there's going to be an emergence of the need for these type of roles to create all these new things that haven't been created before, and there's going to be an acceleration of these things. So demand for both project management, product management, and the analysts that will support those management positions, they're going to be on the rise. So understanding the importance of these new technologies that are just now emerging and understanding at least enough, you don't have to be an expert. All you have to do is focus on your power skills, because those are your crossover skills that allow you to manage any project, no matter what it is that is being done. Just get it done, because project management is about getting it done, no matter what it is. Product management is about figuring out how do you come up with these ideas and concepts and transform them into real valuable products that somebody wants to buy, and identify everything from the problem that you're solving to the right solution that fits the market to selling, putting together the right business model to sell into that market as quickly as you can. And both of these are going to require an acceleration, because you can't just produce and hoping that the product will sell itself, because that is never the case. You need to find someone who can have the vision as to what is the right problem to be solving, the right solution that fits that market that you've identified, and the best business model as to how you can create cash flow, revenue, and then profitability as quickly as you can, even as you are maybe 80% done based on what the market really needs, and start delivering it in a way that through the agile project management, you use the power of incremental and iterative deliveries to improve on how you go to market. So you start with what you go to market, and you continue to improve to continue to just get that traction that you're looking for eventually, based on your knowledge of that market.
I'm glad
both roles will be needed much quicker. And guess what? There's no AI in the world that is going to replace those type of jobs. If all you understand is that these are all building blocks, these technologies are simply building blocks today, and just like any building block, they're going to need a lot of hand-holding by the people who can get the right experts to work together as a team, not just as a group of individuals, but as a team. And the power skills are the ones that you need as a project manager and as a product manager to actually achieve what needs to be achieved in the next 10 years or so. So I think the opportunities for both project, program, and product management is going to increase. And the people that analyze and understand, what are the tactics to be used, all the analysts, whether it's business or data, product analysts, all those analysts are also going to increase, because there's a lot of architecture that needs to be done first, a lot of design that needs to be done first, before you can have a solution that can be delivered to any market.
I'm so glad that was such I can't add to that response, because it was so perfect and complete. But what I love about it is that it just reiterates my whole philosophy and my own convictions about this, which is that this is going to be a golden age for exactly what you said: project managers, product managers, program managers, and business analysts, because 99.9% of what you need to know about building applications and managing applications is in the PMBOK. you don't need to be subject matter experts in any of these new technologies. But what you do need is a basic level of technological literacy, which is what a discussion like this will give you. If it gives you the terminology, so that you know a little bit about the concepts, and maybe you can do a little bit of research on your own, that may be all you need in order to establish a mental model so that you can understand what people are talking about in the workplace. But ultimately, fundamentally, I think you're right. And when you combine your point with the fact that so many of the baby boomers are going to be retiring over the next, I mean, this is the peak. The peak is this year. It's peaked out in terms of this is the last of the baby boomers are entering retirement right now. That also creates an enormous amount of opportunity, which I think will counteract any loss of jobs that comes from the automation side. So I agree with you. I think it's a great call to action for people to sort of become more technologically literate, to learn a little bit about all these things, because this is the world that we're going to be asked to be playing in. Hector, I'm going to have to ask you to come back because we only scratched the surface with some of these topics. But before we go, can you just tell us a little bit about boldpm.co, your firm? Because I didn't hit that in the beginning, and I want people to know about what services you actually provide as a firm.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much. So BoldPM is a product management consulting firm, and we work with mid-market organizations that need to create and build high-performing product teams and help them turn ideas into viable, valuable products in the market faster than the competition. And so we actually work with product executives and the teams that actually are creating current products and new products for within an organization, and helping them figure out how to actually become much better at performing the things that they need to do, which is to maintain current products in market for as long as possible, continuing to add value to those customers, but also at the same time, work on new products that need to be introduced at some point in the near future, and figuring out how to get the right product to market fit to get traction and continue to create more revenue and cash flow and eventually profit for the organization.
Well, thank you again for your time today. We look forward to having you come back. But until next time.
Great. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.